just for handing it back. Okay, here we go. Moving forward. Hope this is working, mostly for the sake of the webcast. Lecture 11. So we're going to keep going with what we were doing before on cost internal to the firm, cost structures. We're going to draw that same drawing that we did last time several more times. I will tell you that exactly next week. It's roughly through the area that we are now into chapter 11 mostly, but I will give you a more precise. Yeah, it's mostly through chapter 10. It could be a little bit of 11. But I will give you like a little thing just about what to study for the midterm next week. The midterm is in 2 weeks from Thursday. Is that right? 1 week from Thursday. All right, I will give you, yeah. Week from Thursday. All right, on this Thursday, I will give you some exact guidance on the midterm. So this class, all this stuff, will be prime material for the midterm. So you're glad that you came this morning. Shutdown point, economic profit versus accounting profit, firm supply versus market supply, and different types of markets. Starting out with, in the problem set 2, we had this question. I want to go back to this and just have a little discussion about it. What's a privately supplied public good? This is something that people came to me asking questions, and it's a little confusing. There's no right answer, but it's just a way to think about things. What do you guys put as examples for this one? What's that?
Water.
What's that? Water. So what about water?
It should be public good. It's all around everywhere, and everybody pretty much should have access to be able to use it. But at the same time, it's privately owned by individual companies that will then go and distribute it and sell it.
So we think of the companies as private companies? Yeah, that's tough. We kind of think of them as, I think of them as public companies. They're like a regulated monopoly. That's like East Bay Mud is the water coming out of the tap here. So I would think of that as sort of like a regulated public company. What do you got? So this is something you hear about where like Coca-Cola buys up a watershed to supply their bottling plant, and the people were taking the water out of that watershed, and now they can't because Coca-Cola wants it. So there's privatization of water happening around the world where water was a private good, water was a public good, public access, and then somebody bought up a watershed. Anybody else? What were your examples? You all had to write something. Like an ambulance or something like that. So private ambulance companies run this, but it's only a public good in that you don't have insurance, right? Ostensibly, you pay for insurance for the ambulance.
Like people who are insured, like if they go to emergency room, they'll get care, and if they won't.
Oh, this is a big one. So care for people that don't have insurance. National debate. How do we get those people? How do we insure those people? And then that's basically the government's paying in the end for those people. So in the end, that ends up being publicly supplied. They just write a check to the private ambulance company for those expenses. Yeah, what do you got? Fireworks. I love that one. I love fireworks. Fireworks in that sometimes the city pays for the fireworks, but when was like a private company paying for fireworks? Disneyland. So you could stand in the parking lot of Disneyland and not go in Disneyland and look up and you can see it, right? Anybody else? Television. So what's which television here? Right, that's an interesting one. So we own the airways. The airways are our public good, and we license little bits of the airways, frequency spectrum, to private companies, and in exchange for their monopoly over that bit of frequency, we say, you need to do so many public service announcements, or so many ads that are like in the public service. So the private company is paying for the electricity to broadcast over it. And it's a public good if it's broadcast, you know, this idea of broadcast TV. The problem with TV is really, for me, like when I watched the Olympics, I realized how much of my brain they were borrowing for advertisements, right? So the way you pay for broadcast TV is you sit through like 20 minutes on the hour of advertisements. So we think of it as free, but we're really giving them, like, in terms of like minutes of my day allocated to something, I was giving that company, NBC, an awful lot of my brain. What's that? The Super Bowl, the greatest spectacle in America, the most people watch it, and then there's like, you know, an hour, 2 hours out of 4 are advertisements or something. Anybody else privately supplied public goods? Good one, good segue, nice. So Planned Parenthood, I like it. And this is totally important to you guys, right? Well, I don't know. You have the Tank Center, but I mean, it takes many services for you to control the possible choices that you have and yourselves, and we can giggle about it, but certainly like the Republicans and, you know, Republican presidential candidates would like to just destroy Planned Parenthood as much as they can and withdraw all the funding and make it go away. And Planned Parenthood is, people give money, right? People send in checks to Planned Parenthood, and they provide services to low-income women for free and to people that can pay for a fee, and they provide public health services based on a combination of grants and private contributions. It's tough where, you know, they're getting, you know, they're hybrid, right? They're getting grants from the government for providing low-income people with service, and they're getting contributions from people. So they have both funding streams. I'll tell you, last semester, I'll go back to this one, but I'll tell you last semester, the one that I liked for this example was the America's Cup. So we had a billionaire and participating in an activity with a couple other billionaires, jousting, and they did it in the middle of San Francisco Bay where you could see it from anywhere, and anybody could just go to the beach and watch the race. And so these billionaires were exhibiting their ego in a way that we could all just sort of like casually partake by walking by. What else? What's another one for me? So on Saturday I was walking around campus with my kid, and I ran into another dad, and he was like, I'm going up to the rugby game. So I had my dog and the kid's bike, and I couldn't take the dog in the rugby game, so we climbed up the hill, and we looked down into the rugby game, so the famous Tightwad Hill. You know, usually the Tightwad Hill's for the football game because it's very expensive and hard to get tickets in the rugby game. Anybody can walk up and pay $5. So, but I had the dog. So me and the dog were watching the rugby game from the hill across the way. We weren't being excluded. So one thing, but going back to Planned Parenthood, we could think about this. Anything that you think about that's charitable contributions. So we have this in our society as a huge thing. And one thing that we do in the policy realm is we think, how should we subsidize, how should the government subsidize that people are providing public goods? So we're so good at this, and this is such a huge sector, that the government subsidizes individual people supplying public goods. And it's much bigger than we think it is. So this is a public policy question, is this question of tax incentives for private people that want to pay for public goods. And we had this structured in a huge way. You get a deduction on your income taxes for charitable contributions. And in the United States last year, it was over $400 billion. So it's a funny thing where you're like trying to answer the problem, saying like, what is that thing that I can get without? But then like in our society level, we have $400 billion worth of Planned Parenthood. A really big one that this goes to is disaster relief. There's been a hurricane in the Philippines. Food drive. Let's get clothes together. Let's get money together and send it to the Philippines. And let's send it to the Red Cross. A lot of human needs. There's children in Africa. There's children. There's orphanages. People at their church give money. That's not just to the church, but for different human needs projects. I'm at the public school, so the public school funding is cut a lot. So we all raise money. And Saturday night I went to like some little dance to like raise money, for the art teacher and the gym teacher, who are like supposed to be part of the public goods, but the tax from the government has been cut short, so the parents make up the public good that's missing from the state by raising money for that. A lot of things we think of as institutions, the San Francisco Symphony is all based on like individual people giving money. People buy tickets, but like as the foundation level to pay for the salaries of people that play musical instruments. Museums are run as foundations, getting grants and private contributions. So they're rival and excludable. Like they're not really rival, but they're excludable. You have to buy tickets to go to a museum, buy tickets to the symphony. But as they exist as cultural institutions that make like San Francisco a great city, they're based on contributions and foundations and gifts. I'm a big I've already made you listen to public radio, and as we know, public radio is based on people giving individual contributions to create this public good that you basically can't exclude people from. And fortunately, on public radio, they make you listen to a lot less of the time in advertisements. They still tell you that like Chevron has brought you the news or whatever, but it's not like 20 or 30% of the time. But anyways, this is a huge sector, and this is a huge part of our society is figuring out what's the right amount. Interestingly, Americans per capita give more money than any other country. So a lot of countries in Europe that we think of, like they're more socially minded, they're more organized around social goals, they're more progressive politically, but a lot more of their public goods are through their higher taxes, right? They give less of their personal money for disaster relief or human needs or public radio because their government taxes are so high. Their government's taking care of providing these public goods. And Americans actually think of Americans as being more individualistic, but interestingly, because this is structured with taxes and because we have sort of a tradition of letting you choose the public goods that you support, Americans are relatively more generous than other countries. Interestingly, for the environment, we do tax deductions for providing environmental goods. And these are two big ones that we can talk about later in the class or sort of think about what the role they are. For an electric car, you can get $10,000 back off the price of the electric car. And for household solar, putting solar panels on the top of your house, you can get 30% of the cost of that system back, which is a huge amount. 1/3 discount is a pretty big discount. And then we have what's called net metering, which is the law. This is getting changed right now, but net metering means that you only pay for the difference. Say you produce electricity and you consume electricity, and you produce in the day with your solar, and then at night you use it when you're heating your home or your lights are on. You only pay the difference. You only pay the amount that you're net consuming. And what this means for the electric company is that you are producing and selling them at a retail rate, which is much higher, right? You're allowed to sell your electricity that you produce at the retail rate. Most of the rest of the electricity that the power company buys, they buy way down at a wholesale rate and then can sell it to us at a retail rate. But if you have your home system, you can sell it to them at the retail rate and buy it back at the retail rate. So you're guaranteed a much higher price than anybody with a power plant who would be selling. And this is interesting on a distribution. If we look at this example, what does a Tesla cost? Anybody? Ballpark? 90,000, something like that? Depends on what battery you get, right? So you buy a $90,000 car, you get a $10,000 rebate. This is going to a very select number of people, right? There's only, and the thing about the Tesla right now, it is sort of like a conspicuous thing. Like it's a little bit showy, right? It's like, look at me, I have a Tesla. So anyways, interestingly that we choose to subsidize, this luxury. Similarly for household solar, right? I mean, one other thing is like, if you want to get this much money in credit, you have to be paying more than that in taxes, right? So that poor people do not have a tax burden that would allow them to take advantage of a $7,500 tax credit, or the tax credit on the solar. So in these solar systems, so say they're $20,000 to $30,000. For a solar system on your house. Who does it benefit? People with the biggest houses, people with swimming pools, people with hot tubs. Again, we have the subsidy that's good for creating more solar roofs in California, but it's basically benefiting the biggest consumer with the biggest house more than more affordable. Why do we think these are public goods? We want to increase the share of electric cars and reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. So this is part of meeting our carbon goals. And we would say, the first people to get electric cars, they're taking a risk that electric cars don't work out. They're taking a risk, like it's a pain because there's not a lot of electric charging stations. We're saying we're going to subsidize the first how many people to get electric cars so that we'll start this market. The same for household solar. So we wanted to subsidize like the first million people, the first million houses that went household solar. Subsidies are now going away for household solar, and it's gotten so cheap that you can afford to do this without the subsidies. But we wanted to get a greater share from the sun and less from fossil fuels, so we wanted to subsidize like the first certain amount of people making electricity from solar. Interestingly, this whole idea about public goods, is low-income housing a public good? It's a little different, but it's related in terms of it's a public good. Like we don't want people to go without housing, so that we allocate some part of. But low-income housing is government grant money to build those housing. Private companies build the building, but it's still government money that's building it. Going back to big policy, so. In Washington, there are some people writing the budget in the Republican Party that are on the right side of things, and they want to get rid of the government as much as possible, do away with the government. Rick Perry was running for president. He says, "I'm going to do away with 3 whole cabinet secretaries." So they're like public goods that we all sort of have some sort of consensus on that. What's what government provides? What's their answer? How do they think about right? So one thing is like private police. Like your community would just pay for private guards instead of having police. Private fire departments. So your community pays for their fire department. It's run as a private company, right? The fire department's run as a company. People just pay a fee to join them. Private schools, we all know about that, and they're very into that you should get tax incentives to go to private school. You should pay less tax if you go to private school. You should get vouchers because private schools might be doing a better job, and why should you be paying school taxes if you don't go there? Private highways are a really good one. We think about highways as one public good that almost everybody uses and almost everybody agrees on. Like California without freeways, it wouldn't be California. So this idea of private companies are going to build toll roads. We can barely think about toll roads here. Toll bridges. This in the development of the American West, this was common. There were toll roads. A little bar comes down. There's a guy living there. You go and pay, and your stagecoach passes through in the road over the mountain. There's some like historic ones around California that you see. And one way to think about this is, we think of like America as like we have a town, we have a main street, we have a mayor, the policeman, the fireman. If we were all the way on this libertarian extreme, it would be a mall. In a mall, you have private spaces, private security, private provision of everything in the mall. some ways, a mall would be an example of the privately supplied public goods. In a lot of places, the mall is like the public place where people meet, but it's privately supplied, bathrooms, guards, everything. A mall is a private venture that's sort of taken over the public sphere that we used to have of towns. A big one that always comes up for public goods is national defense. That's like the classic one that's in every Econ 1 textbook. So, and I think we're sort of at a time in history where we should be able to just give up on this example completely. So here's an estimate for the cost of defending the Persian Gulf, $8 trillion from 1976 to 2010. So we've decided that the United States thinks that the Persian Gulf is super important. It's the center of where oil comes from. Oil drives the economy. Our companies make a lot of money from oil. We have a whole fleet. So, there's only so many fleets. Here's an aircraft carrier group. We have aircraft carriers that are just stationed and dedicated to the Persian Gulf. We've had 3 wars there at incredible cost in terms of human lives and in terms of the trillions of dollars. And who is really benefiting from that? Like, is that something that we're all benefiting from? The price of oil hasn't gone down. It hasn't necessarily gotten more secure. In some ways, so Persian Gulf this is Iran. This is Saudi Arabia. These are all these Emirates. This is Iraq. These are the countries that need to keep the Persian Gulf secure. These are the countries that are selling all this oil and generating all this wealth. And we've decided that the United States should pay for the protection of it. Iran needs the oil to get out of there much more than we do, incidentally. So here we go. This is the share of the oil leaving the Persian Gulf that goes to the United States. It's 10% of the oil. So this is back to this public good. There's that third roommate in the problem set who's not going to pay for the lamp, but the other roommates are going to buy the lamp, right? So here we go. Japan, 20% of the oil. China, 14% of the oil. India, 13% of the oil. South Korea, 12.9% of the oil. So we're spending trillions and trillions of dollars to protect this sea lane so that the oil can get out. Yeah? We get a lot from Russia. But England has oil. Norway has oil. North Africa has oil. Interestingly, they're not getting it from the Persian Gulf. Who knew? They wouldn't even show up on this. But Asia definitely is. So we've decided this is like a fundamental thing that we're paying for as a public good for the United States. But interestingly, there's some free riders in Asia, potentially. I would argue we could just not spend the trillions of dollars and the oil would still flow out, and Iran and Saudi Arabia would somehow figure out how to get the oil out without us spending $5 trillion or whatever, $8 trillion. But interestingly, this free rider problem is a big deal in terms of how we solve things and the wars that we get out of it. There's plenty of wars still going on between Iran and Saudi Arabia. But I diverge. Okay, here we go. We are back to where we were. I'll stop ranting, and we'll go to the graph that we had before. This is the internal cost structure of a firm. We looked at it in terms of a spreadsheet last time, and again, I'm going to draw this graph a whole bunch of times. Hopefully it'll work out nicely. So we have our average cost. We're going to do 3 lines for this one. We have our average variable cost, and we'll look for the bottom point of this line and the bottom point of, and we'll look for the bottom of this line, and we'll draw a line that goes through those points. That will be our marginal cost. So I'm going to draw this a few times. We saw it in a spreadsheet, how we could generate these. We thought about what it means in terms of, the average cost and average variable cost are different by the average fixed cost, which is going away as it gets bigger. That's why these 2 lines are converging. We thought about how we know that marginal cost is going to go through the minimum of these 2 lines. And we think about the firm has this as the cost to produce per unit different levels of output. So we think about our axes to think of sort of rounding ourselves where we are. So this is more output. The factory's producing more. The farm's producing more. And this is the cost to produce. The cost is going up the more that we produce. At first, the cost is going down, and then later the cost is going up as we produce more and more. So we're starting in the short term. The firm is a price taker. We'll talk about this a whole bunch. The firm is getting the price from a market, and it's deciding how much to produce based on the price of the output that it's getting. It's going to take the price it gets, set it equal to marginal cost, and that will give it an indication of how much output to produce. And within the way we've constructed things, this means that the firm is profit maximizing. This point where price and marginal cost are equal is the point that the firm has maximized its profits. So I'm going to draw the same thing again. This will be many times today. If you want to draw it just once or twice and use like some sort of colored pen or something. So here's our minimum. Here's our minimum. So there's going to be a price. Let's say there's a price right here that comes from the market signal, and the firm decides to set price equal to marginal cost. And they decide we are going to set our factory to produce this much. We're going to set our farm to produce this many bushels. So in here, we have what's the total revenue, right? The total revenue is price times quantity, okay? And in this case, it's P star times Q star. It's a big box that's here. That's total revenue, that big box. Now, at this point of production, the firm knows how much it's costing to produce that much. And it's going to take that off of this average cost point. This average cost point is going to lead over to the cost of Q star. So the total cost will be the average cost